All right, we made it to objective 4. So it is to summarize why integration can be a positive alternative to ultimatums. The rationale behind setting this objective is, aside from learning how to set a boundary, offering another alternative to ultimatums to meet the array of needs of participants will be efficient and useful. So before diving into integration, we can look at compromises in comparison to ultimatums. So when someone gives an ultimatum, it is asking the recipient to compromise their wants and needs to meet their ultimatum. So both men, 62%, and women, 61%, prefer to compromise in order to solve their problems. So some people are willing to give up their own interests for the sake of a partner, whereas others may focus on self-interest, which reflects individual differences and willingness to sacrifice. So this ties in compromises being made when an individual who has less power has to give up something to resolve an existing situation, such as an ultimatum. So since ultimatums are presented in the form take it or leave it, the person on the receiving end may feel pressured, coerced, or manipulated to compromise their wants and needs to avoid the negative consequences in the ultimatum. So now we can focus on integration, which is when the contending parties find the wider solution that includes both of their interests. So ethically right integration works better in practice, for it leads to longer term, more productive, and happier relations. So the central fact underlying all relations is the question of power and how it can be used to get one's way. So when power does not work, we move to compromise. Compromise to bases relationships is wrong in principle and does not work in practice either. So whenever there is a dispute, a conflict of any kind, it may be heavily pushed to find a compromise. So according to Graham in 1998, he asked his readers to note how often his readers may hear in the local media that compromise is now the approved way of settling most controversies, that it may be considered reasonable, sensible, and civilized to compromise during a conflict. So just as compromise is being normalized in the media, so are ultimatums. That it is normal to give your partner a demand as a take it or leave it proposition, and it should be expected that the other partner will compromise to meet the partner's needs and the relationship's needs. So that is how the two connect. So compromise and ultimatums, they may provide peace at a certain period for only a short period of time, as it's a temporary fix. So there is simply a better way to resolve these differences through integration. So the solution interlinks and interlocks both parties' interests without sacrificing anything of significance to either individuals. So before, it was a plus for me is a minus for you, and now it becomes a plus for you is also a plus for me. So when facing conflict, you can refer back to this formula. She wants A, and I want B. How can I find a solution which includes A and B? So thinking in the context of ultimatums in this revised approach, you shift from ultimatums to a more collaborative approach with the goal of finding a solution that respects both partners, which can create higher satisfaction in the relationship. Therefore, the takeaway is that integration involves both parties to work together to find the bigger picture instead of creating a one-sided controlling narrative to get what you want. So in conclusion for this slide, finding an integrative solution is hard, but in the long run, it is more productive and creative than initiating a short-term temporary solution of an ultimatum or shifting to compromise. So now we can take a look at this chart, which is from Graham, 1998, Techniques for Reaching Agreement. So this can be a useful takeaway for participants to think about how one might compare to the other and give a more clear visual understanding between the two. So emphasizing collaboration, open communication, and a mutual benefit is much more helpful in generating healthier interpersonal dynamics and long-term positive outcomes. So now you can take a look at the references on the next slide and then move into the last activity.